Hi. So again, hello everyone, and so we came back to the webinar and about circular territories, and so now I'm very glad and honored to introduce our special guest, Professor Mosè Ricci from the Accademia dei Lincei University of Trento, that we will talk about the Medways project. And so, Mosè, when you want, we can also start in sharing the presentation. Then we'll have 10 minutes for also some questions and answers.
Okay, thank you, Federica, and thank you, Jörg, and thank you, Incuna, I think the organizers of this conference, and I'm very glad to be here and honored. I am honored to be invited as special guest. That is something like a pop singer, and that is not bad because I like the pop culture, so I'll start. I'll talk to you today about a particular circular territory that I try to share my screen. Let me know if you see that.
Yeah, we can see it perfectly.
You see, but I don't. So
right now,
maybe, no, maybe yes. Okay, yeah. You see that?
Yes, great. Yeah, better.
Okay, thank you. So invited me to speak about the Medways project. That is a project about Mediterranean. Is a research project that I presented to the National Academy of Sciences that we call the Accademia dei Lincei. But every 2 or 3 years makes a contest for researchers and research projects, and I won in 2019, and with this strange project for the National Academy of Sciences, because it's the first time that an architect wins, and also is a strange research project because it's a research project based on different narratives. I called many scholar friends or people that I knew, people that made interesting researches about Mediterranean to participate, and now we are almost 150. And the groups of this scholar, every group is presenting its way of Mediterranean. And the way of Mediterranean means the ways, I mean, the physical infrastructure that are relevant in the Mediterranean context, but also means the way in which things are made in the Mediterranean. And each scholar or group of scholars should present his Mediterranean way with a narrative, with a map, with some images, and with 5 keywords that will link the Medways proposed to the idea of Mediterranean, because the research has multiple purposes. One is to preserve these systems of relationship that can leave traces on the Mediterranean landscape. And so just telling about writing and showing up in an exhibition about those systems is a way to preserve, we think. Another objective is to try to understand what is really the idea of Mediterranean, this strange idea that we all have of this beautiful territory, circular territory, because it's in the middle of Europe, Asia, and Africa.
Mosè, sorry to interrupt you, because I don't know if you are moving the slides, because right now we just see the cover.
Yeah, because I am stopped on the cover, but if you want, I can go ahead. And so And so the second objective is to understand what is the sense of Mediterranean, the real sense of Mediterranean, the thing that attract us in this basin, despite the state of government, the conflicts, nothing really works in the Mediterranean. The local governments are very personal managed and so on. But at the end, all of us, we would like to spend our holidays or to spend a part of a life or to buy a house in the Italian or Greek or Spanish islands, for example. And why? This is a sort of mystery, because if we analyze the Mediterranean with the categories that we used to use when we speak about territories, we find more negative things than positive. But at the end, the attraction of the Mediterranean on the human bodies and minds is fantastic. And the last objective is to make a sort of Odyssey in the Mediterranean, to rediscover the Mediterranean through the narrative, the stories of all the scholars, like in the Odyssey. And I wanted to make this research with a big group, like a common adventure, and through narratives and not description, because I think that the description but we all know very well, and we had very important, peculiar authors that spoke about and wrote about the description in the territorial sciences, like Bernardo Secchi, for example. No? But the description is the way to watch at a territory, saying what is correct and what is good and what is wrong, what is correct and what is not correct. I mean, the description is the idea that the author that is describing has of that territory and give to us. The narrative is different. Narrative is something that comes from the bottom, from our grandma, our grandfather. Is something that can be true or can be fake, is precise or not. And at the end, the narrative is like a popular way to describe territories, to identify territories, but it's very effective, because even in the fake narrative, there is always, the real mood, the real sense, the real values of the places that are narrated in that. And narrative is very important, even for the design disciplines, for architecture and planning and urbanism. For example, if you go to the Biennale now, you can find this wonderful Chile pavilion that is a sort of box inside the Arsenale spaces. This blue box that contains 500 small portraits, oil portraits of a local community of a neighbor in the border of Santiago de Chile. Santiago, we have many Mediterranean, so also the Latin country in the South America are very Mediterranean in this, for example. And these 500 pictures with some sentences in the walls like this. I remember that one night my father got lost in the neighborhood. All the houses were the same. He was walking with a candle in the hand and nothing else. And that night he entered in another house and he went to bed. The incredible thing is that that one was not his home. So, and so many narratives like that, written or painted on these small community portraits, I would say, that have an immense potential on architecture as, device, as imagination devices. And just out of the pavilion, of the Chile pavilion, 200 meters far from that, there is this marvelous installation by Alejandro Aravena, that is Chilean too. And I think the two things are not by chance in at the same time in Venice now. And this is a circular territory with is a circular space defined by these trees, the branches of trees that are put it in this strange circular structure. And this is not the invention of Alejandro Aravena, but is the reproduction of this circular part of land, the circular square, I would say, that the Chilean made in the Mapuche territory in the south of Chile, in Patagonia. You can see the mountain here. Just to have, a sort of a safe space with local communities. And inside the circle, they spoke about the government of the territory, the power on the land, and so on and so on. It was a place of peace. It's a circular territory defined by an installation like this one. And so also this project is not, the gesture of an archistar, but is the reproduction of an existing structure for making the agreement between among different populations, the Chilean, the Spanish, and the Mapuche. And this is a narrative again. I mean, it's the way in which narrative can be transformed in an architectural project. But let's go back to the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean is a place of narrating. The Mediterranean is still narrating itself and relies relentlessly from by Brodel, the Mediterranean. We all know that. We who lives or had the opportunity to go in the Mediterranean has heard a lot of narrative about the different places, but also the landscape are narrating the Mediterranean, like this one that is in the island of Ponza, just near here where I am in Rome, in the south of the Rome region, where a Roman quarry, a former Roman quarry, has become a pool, I would say, a place where people or kids can take bath without swimming in the cold sea, or just to admire it. I mean, nobody knows what is it exactly. It's like a footprint in the landscape. It's part of the landscape. And everybody can imagine what is it. An old temple, a quarry, a pool, but somebody dig on the rocks. I don't know, but this idea of stimulating the narrative is also an idea of territory or landscape project that happens into us when we look at the Mediterranean landscape that is not natural, but is an artifact that is full of all those stories. This is another place on the Mediterranean, very famous though, that is the island of Amorgos in the Cyclades in Greece. This place is very famous for two things. The first one is that this Panagia Ozoviotissa is the most ancient monastery in the islands, in the Cyclades Islands, 6,000 islands in the Aegean Sea, and is also the most beautiful considered. But also the sea that is, on the left of the image is the Aegean Sea and Aegean is the Aegean Sea in this Greek, antique Greek root, means the principal sea, but also the Aegean, the principal sea is the word arche in Greek. So the principal sea, if you translate in another way in Greek, is the archipelagos. But the archipelagos is, a place of islands. So it's very strange that the principal sea is a place of islands. It's like an inhabited territory. It's not, the distance between the different coastlines in the different countries. It's a place where people live. The archipelago are those 6,000 islands in the Aegean Sea, but also, all the group of islands that we find all over the world. But the words come from here. And this, in this Aegean Sea, this place downhill of the monastery is the place of the Grand Blue of Luc Besson, this movie that they always projected in the islands, and the place of the Grand Blue is in front of this monastery that is in reality just a wall closing, a cave, an open cave of the landscape, the Grand Blue, and if you swim in this sea, I don't know if anybody of you have been there. The water is really blue. It's a miracle. It's like a miracle. It's not by algae. It's not by microorganism. It's simply like that. So, what is the Mediterranean? This research is to discover this. I wrote here that interpersonal is its social organization. Landscape is the big infrastructure of this place, and narrative is the shape, the form of this place. Fake, real, who knows, in any case. Oh, I don't know how to go ahead. So we did already 4 or 5 conferences for this Mediterranean way, and we have different authors that are working on different narratives. This is an island of the Mediterranean. The island is Patmos in the north of the Dodecanese, in front of Turkey. And the strange thing that is very representative of the Mediterranean, because Patmos is the second holy places in Greece after the mountain Athos. But in the mountain Athos, only the men can go. In Patmos, also the women can stay. So all the merchants of the Aegean League that were the merchants that brought the goods and the jewels, all the goods from Asia to Europe, they set their family home in Patmos, because even when they were sailing, the islands could not be attached. So the place is beautiful, with this ancient monastery of 1,000, and around it a small town with beautiful Turkish, Venetian, Cypriots, or Greek family houses. And in the square of the Demarchion, that means the city of this place that is under the UNESCO preservation office, but is under also the Archbishop of Constantinople and the Greek government, of course, the 3 flags that are in front of the Demarchion facade. In this square, you have the Demarchion, the flags, and then you have the statue of a hero of the island in, I don't remember the battle, and the benches are, turned the other way. I mean, towards the landscape, not towards the symbols of the church, of the government, of the local personalities, but it's impossible not to be attracted by the Mediterranean Sea and the view that arrives to the other islands and then to the Turkey. And, you know, look at these two women. So, again, on narrative, but
So this is the Mediterranean Sea, which is surrounded by 21 different countries.
another narrative you can make about the project of the Mediterranean, like this one that was made by the German Hermann Sergel in the late 20s.
idea that helps to illustrate how this may be possible. His idea was called the Atlantropa Project, and it's basically what engineers create whenever they've had a bit too much whiskey to drink. The plan took into consideration that the Mediterranean Sea is naturally evaporative, which means that more water evaporates out of the sea than flows into it by rivers and streams. The difference is made up by salt water that flows into the sea through the Strait of Gibraltar, which means that in theory, if you could block off this water flow, you could begin to drain the water out of the entire rest of the sea. Sorgel intended to build a colossal dam here for that exact purpose, along with another dam here between Sicily and Tunisia to divide the Mediterranean into two separate halves, and a third dam here to block off the water from the Black Sea from getting through. The plan involved lowering the water levels by 100 meters on the western side of the Mediterranean and by 200 meters on the eastern side. This would have drained about 1/5 of the entire Mediterranean Sea, which means that it would have created about 576,000 square kilometers of new land, an area roughly the size of Spain and Ireland combined. The continents of Europe and Africa would be directly connected, and this new continent was intended to be called Atlantropa. The new land around the Mediterranean was intended to be colonized by new European settlers. The combined dams could probably have provided enough clean hydroelectric power for all of Europe, and the project would have employed hundreds of thousands of people for the 100 years that it was planned the project would last for.
Okay, and then this project provide the agriculture in the Sahara Desert, because the evaporation of the sea in the Mediterranean will cause some hard rains in the desert that can become the place where the new European citizen can grow up their food. So, I mean, this is fantastic, but not that much. I have a research about the possibility to make a tunnel between Italy and Tunisia to connect the two continents, Europe and Asia, in the next years. Also, the Mediterranean is a place of beauty. We all know that, and is a place of habitats and continuous habitats, especially, you know, on the north part of the Mediterranean, but also in the Turkish coast and in the north of Africa, in Egypt and in Tunisia. And is the place in Europe and Asia that is growing more in terms of built volumes. In Italy, we did 300 million cubic meters per year in the last 20 years, more or less. And in the Turkish coast is probably even worse. We can identify the system through reading what's happening in the islands, because the islands are like, you know, are places where you can count precisely the phenomena, like cells, like small laboratories. And then we consider, through the research of Stefania Staniscia, 3 islands where the phenomena are very different, but are very representative of what is happening to the coasts of Mediterranean. The first is Mallorca, where urbanization, tourist urbanization is the theme. And this arrives all around Mediterranean. This is Mersin in Turkey. You see, incredible. All in the last 20 years, or the Costa de Oro in Spain. The other island is Sujac, where the phenomenon is abandonment And in Italy, we have 5.5 million of empty houses in 2018, probably more now. And the fall of construction market and many empty houses also in the new construction.
1 minute left if we want also
Yeah.
to have questions.
I go fast. The third one is Lampedusa, where the problem, you all know, is the fluxes of immigration, migrants. And so the conflicts, the migrants that crosses the Mediterranean to arrive all over the world. But if you look at the beautiful small video made by Diller Scofidio about, the name is Exit, about migration in the world, you discover something that we probably know, that migration is the condition, the usual, the metabolical condition of our habitats. And since the ancient time before Christ, all the countries are, land of migration, and the people, the population tends to move, to cross, to fight. And so Mediterranean is this kind of theater. The other issue is the environment, of course, and the water increase, the water level increase in the Mediterranean. All those things are narrated in this research that is made by a cluster of scholars of 177 authors for 115 Medways. And I don't know, we don't have time, but I brought some to describe you. I mean, in the feature, they are all like that. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Mosè, for this overview about the project and this also interesting point of view about the Mediterranean. And so I want to ask to the audience if there are questions or comments that you want to add also after the lecture of Mosè Ricci.
Well, maybe, Mosè, I can tell a short story from this morning, no? Because we invited Orange Fiber from Catania. No, they make this fiber for clothes out of the waste from orange juice production. No, fantastic. And already, no, Salvatore Ferragamo and H&M did collections, no, with this new fiber. And well, now they want to upscale. And I asked them, no, where will you produce it in the end? No? And they said, well, probably in Sweden, because they are the experts about this cellulose fabrication, no?
Yes.
And it's difficult to bring them to Sicily, no? And let's say, well, it's a bit two-faced, no? On one hand, you could say they construct a perfect Mediterranean narrative, no?
Yeah.
And then, on the other hand, no, maybe the idea of the Mediterranean is really also something bigger, no, that even Sweden is part of the Mediterranean, no? What do you think?
No, that is very interesting for me, because, and we have some Medways that is outside the Mediterranean strict area. And yes, maybe also Sweden is part of the Mediterranean. I don't know, because they are the Vikings. They were using other boats, other kind of boats. But for sure, we have many, Petar Matveevich, so that wrote that many times. But we have many other Mediterranean, where all the Spanish domination was. There are small Mediterraneans, for example. There are Mediterraneans in Africa, where the Italians were before the Second World War. So, and then there is probably a small Mediterranean between the Baltics country, the Finland, the Swedish, and the Denmark, maybe in that, you know, part of the Baltic Sea. But you know, we go back always to the first problem. What is this idea of Mediterranean? And what is the passport? What kind of way of inhabit the place, give you the passport to be Mediterranean? For example, just to go back to the chronicle, in my opinion, Lacaton and Vassal, they won the Pritzker Prize. They're very Mediterranean in the way in which they conceive the construction. Never demolish, just adding, watching in the climate, adaptation through architectural devices, the terraces, the space of relationship. They are not so Mediterranean if you know them. Jean-Philippe is very serious, and but I think that their work is at the end Mediterranean in the way in which they think the double idea, to adapt to the environment, to the climate, but also to reuse the existing, using the existing as a construction material. These are at the different scale of the city, of the singular building. Never demolish, never build new, just add. And this is very peculiar of the Mediterranean way of inhabiting the landscape, the places.
I think this is very interesting. Today we discussed a lot about bioeconomy. That to use in a more holistic way everything, and maybe this can be also linked to this Mediterranean thinking, what you are narrating, that as particular ability, to really invent the new ways, to use really even the fico d'India,
Yeah. You don't waste anything, the fico d'India, the orange skins, and everything is in such a way recycled. I mean, all the items that we are trying to introduce in the architectural, in the design debate today, the recycle, the reuse, the parasite architecture. I mean, all those are already paradigms of the Mediterranean architecture. Also, the loss of authorship in building cities and architectures. I mean, the authorship is not, because in the Mediterranean environment, everybody is contributing to the final result. In economy, like in agriculture, like in city building, and the idea of authorship is not so present, I would say, in the tales of Mediterranean. It is always a sort of collective action.
And
well, that's probably a second really also future related topic. Sorry to say, that for architects is absolutely crucial. That when we tell our students how will you maybe work later, they for sure they have to be much more open to other fields, much more communicative, much more interlinking different things. And this was a second message we also got from Orange Fiber. We asked them, what people are you looking for? And they said, okay, yes, they need chemists and they need biologists, but people that are really not limited to the standard business, but looking beyond the borders.
Also, we could debate about what is, I mean, we could debate about if something that we are used to consider very Mediterranean in architecture or in the city layout is really Mediterranean. If you think to the Salto de Mura works, or I mean, all of this kind of architects that consider the light on the white walls and the closures of walls, are they really Mediterranean? The architecture made of, you know, singular, iconic blocks. And so I don't know, I don't think so. I think that the Mediterranean architecture is open. There's a lot of windows. In every window there is the sea or the landscape, and not the other room of your house in the courtyard. And so there is, you know, Mediterranean can cause or generate some kind of misunderstanding, I think.
Yeah, and so we will continue.
Just to provoke the Spanish guys. No, joking.
I don't know, maybe Fede, maybe we can ask Miguel also for a comment. Huh?
Sí, Miguel, si quieres hacer un comentario